Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congresswoman Lateefah Simon. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you because I can only imagine how busy your week must have been. And as we know, on Tuesday night, President Donald Trump delivered an address to a joint session of Congress. Trump, in the speech, it was over 90 minutes. He declared America is back. It was partisan in nature, and some Democrats protested, including yourself. So I do want to get into that. But first, can you describe, while you were in the room, what was the mood like?
You know, I have been doing community work, leading institutions, working with unlikely allies for 30 years. I have never felt what I felt in that chamber. The divisiveness coming from the other side of the aisle was stark. It was visceral. The other thing that was really interesting, and it's one thing to watch it on C-SPAN or CNN or, the other networks. It's the other thing to be in that chamber and to be a Democrat and look out on the left side of the aisle and to see all of America represented, all that we are, every faith, every background, wealthy and working class, everything in the middle, and to see the beauty, the strength that we have collectively weaved together as a country, and really then look on the other side of the aisle and see a monolithic tone, both in politics and background. We want an America, at least I do, many of us do, that brings us together, that doesn't separate and segregate. And that was on full display for all to see. So, of course, being disappointed at the Republicans for lifting up that reality that they don't value diversity. They don't value what is so central to this country, inclusion. But moreover, when the president began speaking, it was just lie after lie. It was a punching down. It was hypocrisy. It's bringing a beautiful child who is fighting for their lives and their parents, child's parents, into the spotlight, knowing all the while that this administration is gutting cancer research for juveniles. It was extremely hard to watch. It was hard to, in that moment, be in a space where you knew that this democracy is in hospice, that we might not have years if we continue to move. That's not fear mongering. It's not hyperbole. It is a fact. When the executive branch continues to ignore the words of the court, the rulings of the federal bench, there's trouble ahead. And so there was a moment when he began talking about Social Security, and you see 40+%, about 44% of the population in my district, they're elders, they're disabled folks, they're low-income folks. 44% of folks in my district receives Medicaid or Medicare. And these cuts are extremely real. They're coming and we know it. To hear the president talking about caring for these folks, knowing he is going to tear our lives apart, knowing that rural hospitals in rural America will in fact close, knowing that when he talks about honoring Social Security, knowing what's in ink right now in this administration, which will move just in 2 weeks, the gutting of Social Security in the Department of Education. There's only so much disrespect for the American people that I could watch. I went back to my office and I worked. I began to prepare for the hearings the next day to tell the truth, not just for the folks in my district, but really, I believe the voices of folks who may have even voted for this president. They didn't vote for a president that was going to attack farmers by cutting them off at the neck, cutting their USAID contracts, where we now have produce rotting all over the country. They didn't vote for this tyranny. They didn't vote for an oligarchy. So we went back to work, and I've been early in this office, and I'm leaving late every single day to make sure that I'm talking to people around the country. We have a democracy to save.
And you and I spoke just about a month ago, and you said, hey, I have to either wear my Rothy's, which are comfortable flats, or I have to wear my sneakers because I am constantly on the move. And we did see you on the move at this joint address because you left. I believe it was at the point when President Trump was speaking about Social Security. You got up and you walked out. And it's interesting to hear what the mood was from someone who was in the room, because when I was watching on TV on Tuesday night, you could see the divide. You could see Republicans Republicans oftentimes cheering. You could hear them chanting USA. There was definitely a more somber tone on the side of the Democrats. The protests did look different. Some Democrats were holding signs that said things like "Save Medicaid," things about Musk, false, things like that. Some Democrats got up and left, like yourself. So were there conversations before about what Democratic protests would look like? And then what was the tipping point for you to say, you know what, I'm out of here?
Yeah. The conversations to me were exhilarating over the days prior to the address. I think Democratic leadership made it clear from actually the first day I was here on the floor that as members of Congress from the Democratic Party, we know that our values are consistent. We want people to get health care when they need it. We believe that Social Security is the safety net, that buying your first home should in fact be something that can happen, that can be tangible, that your mother, your grandmother, your grandfather can live their last years with dignity and respect, that unions are a part of the fabric of making sure that folks are not exploited in the workplace. I can go on, and reproductive health is a right that women and families should be able to embrace regardless, again, who they vote for, that housing should in fact be something that we all hold dear, that homelessness and public safety are issues that we want to dig deeply into and change the fabric, the existence of what's happening in our cities. We get that. We agree with that. The beautiful piece about being a Democrat, we are also students of history, and we know that civil disobedience is what has advanced civil and human rights, which has brought women into the workplace, that ended segregation in this country. We are united in our understanding that we need an inside and an outside strategy of how we express our love for country, our patriotism, and also our dissent. So the unifying vision was that we were duly elected by members of our districts, and our members of my district, they encouraged me to go, but also to take a stand when it was too much. And that's exactly what I did.
I'm a student of history too, and I know there have been a few instances in State of the Unions. This wasn't a State of the Union by name, but in nature, it essentially was. And then I know that members of Congress have protested presidents in the past.
Yes.
One Republican protested President Obama. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a congresswoman from Georgia, protested President Biden.
She screamed out liar, right? And she was not censured. Remember?
That you're getting me to my next point there. We saw at the beginning, Congressman Al Green, he stood up, he was shaking his cane, he was viscerally upset. He yelled to President Trump something like, "You don't have a mandate." He was escorted out at the beginning of this address. Today, he was censured. What do you make of that?
I just actually took my pen and I wrote out some thoughts about Mr. Green today. He rose that staff for all of us, red and blue, to tell a president who wants to be a king that he doesn't have the right to gut Medicare and Medicaid from the sick and the elderly. The righteous indignation was not just a protest, okay? It was the most patriotic thing that Mr. Green could have done. As somebody who has lived through the civil rights movement as a 77-year-old man, he took his right as a duly elected member of his house, the House of Representatives, and called a liar a liar. Now, but what he said, he didn't say what Marjorie Taylor Greene said in front of Biden. He said, "You don't have a mandate to take away care from the poor and the sick." That was the truth. And what he was heckled down like we were at a neo-Klan rally by men in the back who told him to sit down. It was a visceral moment that I'll never forget in my life. I am so proud of Mr. Green. I am so proud that all Democrats, again, sat through what they knew were lies. Some walked out, some held signs. And Mr. Green, sat in front of that well. And for me, he represented millions, not just his district. He represented many folks around the world who are watching with anguish as someone lies to the American people. Now, folks who still believe that the Trump administration will do right by them, I believe that we are going to have a reckoning in just a few months. Should they pass a budget that is anti-working class, anti-poor people, that seeks to provide resources for the rich and for corporations that continue to punch down on folks in their weakest moments. I'm proud of Mr. Green. He taught me a lot.
You're proud of him. You respect his actions. I know 10 Democrats voted with Republicans in censuring Congressman Green. Some had took issue with the fact that you should respect the office, that type of thing against these protests. What do you think of that debate there? And also, what do you think about those 10 colleagues in your party who voted with Republicans to censure him?
So again, we both love history. Can you imagine if we said that if electeds were gathered around, electeds with thoughtfulness and righteousness who respected their own office would gather around a George Wallace as he talked about segregation today and tomorrow? Like, no, we would say absolutely not. That is not what is enshrined on the base of the Statue of Liberty. That is not who we should be. We have to move forward. I understand respecting that space. That's why I went in the first place. That's why I swore to fight off enemies, both foreign and domestic, in our policy work. But we cannot and we should not get to a point where we're allowing anyone, regardless of party, to weaken the American soil and its people. We can't allow that.
How do we move forward? Because I'm sure you saw the Democratic response from Senator Alyssa Slotkin, and she's from Michigan, and Donald Trump won Michigan in 2024. She won Michigan as a Democrat. She had more of a moderate tone, in my opinion, because she was talking about her father being a Republican, her mother being a Democrat, talking about bridging those gaps. She also said that President Reagan would be rolling in his grave over the White House meeting that President Trump had with Zelensky. What do you think of her response, and how do Democrats move forward? What are the next moves?
You know, I was excited to see her. You know, we met each other a number of times on the campaign trail together, and I think she's very, very good. I think she's brilliant. And I appreciated her response. I, too, come from a multi-faith and a multi-political family, both Republicans and Democrats. Americans have American values. And again, we didn't see, and she illuminated, we didn't see a uniting force at the head of that dais, in front of that flag. So we agree. And this is, again, what I am saying in no ways is radical. I think what I'm saying and how I believe that we should be moving towards governance is enshrined in our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and in the Federalist Papers that said we must advance away from tyranny and hold up a republic that is truly one, that lifts up its people. You know, our senator, she echoed those sentiments so beautifully, and talked about, again, the fabric of who we are. I was so excited to see her speech. The Republican Party, and again, many folks on my father's side from deep Louisiana are Republicans, are African-American Republicans. The party of Lincoln, the party of Reagan, while so much happened in that administration that I think was detrimental to our country, I do believe that the Republicans of old had a respect for civility and had a respect for the international relations and foreign policy that doesn't exist in this administration. I am sad to see that we're shrinking from being a leader on the world stage, where our humanity as a nation is now being questioned. And so instead of working with our allies to defend their homelands, our administration has chosen to work with the aggressor, who is anti-democratic. So she was right on. She knew what to say. And again, the beautiful pieces of our party is we have collective values, and we also understand that we don't parrot anti-democratic messaging. We don't have to parrot messaging. Even if we don't believe it in our hearts, we could speak our truths. Members of the Republican Party have joined in together to say that it is okay to strip resources from the poor and from the sick and folks who are seeking asylum. We're going to hold true with our values, and that's what she did.
And I asked you this last month. I am curious, where do you think Democrats go next? Because you saw a Republican Party at that joint address, like I said, that was unified. You saw different protests from different Democrats on the more somber side, and some Democrats didn't even like those protests. So what are those conversations like? And then what are the next moves for your party?
Democrats are not sheep, all right? They're not sheep. We are going to be a group that has opinions, and at the same time of voicing those opinions, we are collectively moving forward. We are working with our partners on the ground. We're working with organizations like Democracy Forward and others, and they are suing the hell out of the administration every day. We are winning many fights. There are some fights that we will lose, and we'll pick back up and we'll sue again. This is a concerted effort. It is a movement, again, to halt the destructive EOs, the destructive budget that is coming to us in just a couple of weeks that's going to make us poorer and sicker. We're united in that fight. Now, again, as a new member of Congress, I'm elated to see that members of our party are going to have different strategies with how we are individually elected by my district elected me to come and produce those values. We should be in conversations about how to lift up all of America, right? And that's what we're doing. I don't believe in any shape or form that the Democrats are split on our values. We're going to move through litigation, again, through holding our votes, not saying yes to a Trump agenda. And I'm excited to be, again, a part of that line.
Congresswoman, I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much for joining me. You are welcome back anytime.
I can't wait to see you again. Thanks so much.